Alright, welcome back. So in this video we're going to talk a little bit about the const keyword now. Now that we have a pretty good idea of what the let keyword, the var keyword are like, let's turn our attention to the const keyword. Okay, so I'm still in my terminal. I'm going to just refresh the node environment by pressing Control D again. That'll quit the node environment, and then I'll type out node, and then I'll press enter on my keyboard. And that should open up a fresh new environment for me to run JavaScript in. All right, so now I want to look at some const variable examples. So essentially, I'm going to type out my first one here. I'll do const a is equal to 23. And as I mentioned before, if I try to redeclare 23 or the variable a to be something else, let's say 32. I'm going to get a syntax error. And let's just read it just slowly, just so we understand. Uncaught syntax error, identifier A has already been declared. So that just reminds you, you can't redeclare the variable, just like with a let keyword. You can't redeclare a variable once you've put it together. However, with the const variable, remember it's a constant, just like in math or science. I also can't reset the value to be 32 because in this particular error, it says uncaught type error assignment to a constant variable. So that just means that from now on, A is always going to be 23 until we close this entire program. And as I mentioned before, that may be actually useful because you may have a variable called pi, and you'll always want to make sure that it can never be overwritten from 3.14. Pi should always mean 3.14. This is not legal. Okay, so with that said, let's also look at a more, convoluted example, just for fun. So some of you out there might be familiar with the library Jquery, and I'm going to pull that Jquery library up real quick. So I'm going to bring it over. So for those of you who don't know what Jquery is this library that is pretty much all over the internet as of today, and it is used to help people write JavaScript in a more simplified fashion. It's really popular with people who use blogs like WordPress or Drupal, maybe using some of the other languages out there. You might see it when you run into maybe your first junior developer job, or even if you're working for an agency or somewhere, you'll probably see a lot of Jquery, right? So looking at this library, you can see some examples here. And you'll see that here, the first example kind of shows that I can grab a button element from HTML, right, on my web page. I can say, oh, I want to take a button from, my website and then, change maybe the HTML inside it to be something else. Often you'll see click. That's very common with jQuery. So when I click, I'll want it to do something, maybe show a pop-up or take me to another web page. You can do that with jQuery. Writing this in regular JavaScript is also simpler, but some people really prefer the jQuery syntax because it's just a little bit more easy to work with, probably easier to read as well. The problem with jQuery is that when you keep using jQuery over time, your jQuery sort of grows to this monstrous beast of code that you have to continue trying to manually edit, and it becomes really difficult too. So at that point, you may decide, okay, well, maybe instead of using jQuery all the time, let's use a framework like Angular or React. And again, we'll talk about all that later in different lectures, different playlists. And I'll be sure to put like a card or something at the top of the video so that you can get to it at the point of time I'm ready with that. But essentially, coming back to this, right, jQuery is all over the web. And it's a very popular library that a lot of people use still even to today. The thing about this is that jQuery was written in 2006, and essentially since 2006, there's been a lot of changes to JavaScript. And so jQuery still uses a lot of old syntax. And so that's why you see like var keyword here instead of let keyword. And along the way, people started using the $sign for other libraries, including Angular, JS1. I think it had the $sign as well, if I believe. Let's take a look. Angular, JS1. I don't know if it's still out there. Let's see, maybe this is the old library. I think this one, angularjs.org, is the older version. And then I think Angular is the newer version. So if you try to use, like, let's see, the older one, let's pull this up. And actually, I'm going to go back and let's do the unminified one. So I'm just going to look in here and take a look at the library and just see, is there a dollar somewhere? And let's see. So I know that it went through a lot of different changes, and they came up with something like the double dollar instead of the regular dollar. But yeah, I know, okay, yeah, maybe somewhere here, right? They probably, I don't know, without reading the function completely, I'm just kind of like assuming. But I remember in some syntax that essentially Angular was referred to as dollar as well. Also, if you use WordPress or Drupal, sometimes like they don't allow you to use dollar out of the box. So, you know, you have like collisions, right? Like you might expect dollar to do something with jQuery, but it doesn't. It actually is an Angular function, right? Or it's a WordPress function, or it's a Drupal function. And so you had like all these problems with libraries just not being, you know, consistent or having the same names. And so you had like collisions. So if I type jQuery here, right, in my, what I did right now just is I inspected the element of this web page, and then I opened up developer tools, and that allows me to just play around with this page and just see what variables are around. So I'm going to type jQuery, and you'll see that that returns me a function with all of the jQuery library. It returns back a jQuery object that allows me to use all these functions. If I type dollar, we'll see that it points to the same library, the jQuery library. So dollar and jQuery essentially mean the same thing. However, using my new ES6 skills, if I want to make sure that no one ever overwrites dollar, I can set dollar to just mean jQuery. And from now on, if I type dollar, you know, let's say I want to do button, right? I don't know if there is a button on this page, but if I press enter, I should get back all the buttons, right? Like all the buttons that are in this page. It seems like there's, you know, a couple. Let's see, oh, okay, I have one button called icon search in here, and I can just double check that by just doing a command find in the HTML body. And let's see, class, it's called icon search. There it is. Okay, so there's the button. So with jQuery, I can grab this button and then I can do something with it, maybe set it to click, you know, and make something happen. I'm not going to do that right now, but I just wanted you to get the basic idea. But you notice that, like I did that with the dollar. I can also do that with jQuery, and I can say dot icon search. And actually, I want to make sure I'm outside of these find and do it on the console instead. So that returns me back the same thing, the button icon search. So you see that jQuery and dollar are the same, but like I said, I don't want people to overwrite this and make this something else. So if I made it number 1, you'll see that now that's not legal. So this is another case like why you would want to just make sure your code is consistent. And this is a good case for using a constant as opposed to you know, a let or a variable with the var syntax. Const is the safest one. It guarantees that whenever we use jQuery, it's always going to mean jQuery. We don't want it to be something else like Angular or something else. So if you're working with libraries, it's a best practice to always make sure that you make the library whatever value you're going to call it, whatever variable you're going to call it, and never change it again after you set it with the const keyword.